So in drunken boxing, the first pole form you actually learn isn't the drunken staff form. It's known as the dragon pole. The dragon pole form is taught to beginners, and it's really, really simple. It's done equally on right and left sides. It contains 2 finishing movements that actually draw Chinese character for sun. So what I've got on the board is the movements for the right hand here and the left hand here. So if you could just zoom in on each of these. So we'll do the right hand. So the movements of the pole will correspond to this diagram. Up for number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, across to 7, 8, and then 9, the center point is a thrusting attack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate the pole form really slowly, and then you'll kind of see how the diagrams work. Okay? So this way. So the first movement is to tap the staff on the ground. This is to attack the foot. Step back into a right leading cat stance. Hold only 1/3 of the staff. Now we follow the diagram. So number 1, up, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 comes up and across like you're rowing a boat. 8, and then 9, we step in to a horse stance, thrusting attack. Now, step back, leaving your hand on the staff, and then you're going to flip the end of the staff upwards like this and catch it with the other hand. This is what does our hand change. So now we're on to the other side of the diagram. Step back, grab the staff again in the same manner, do the same techniques in the Yin Yang reversal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, row the boat, 7, 8, step in, thrusting attack. Number 9, step back again, horse stance. Flip the staff again, withdraw. So the finishing 2 movements draw the character for the sun, the ancient character in Chinese dialect. So the rear hand draws a circle outwards and across, 1, and then you repeat the circle the other way, 2, with a small flick down at the end. Withdraw, and hit the ground. That's the entire form. So let's take a look again at the board. If I'm facing the board, so you can see the end of my staff during the form, I tap the ground. On my right hand, which is my lead hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, step forward, thrust for number 9. Step back, toss the staff, and now my left hand is forward on this diagram here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, step in, thrust. Number 9, I step back again, flip the staff, withdraw into my cat stance, and remember here, it's the rear hand that creates the power. 1, 2, 3. Now this is just a fundamental form, and before you even try doing a staff form, if you haven't trained martial arts before, I recommend learning this one. If you have, make sure you practice any other staff form that you do know extensively. It's really important. Now, the reason that this pole form is taught in drunken boxing, as well as in 8 Shadows, which this is a beginner form in 8 Shadows fist, isn't necessarily just so that you can learn how to use a staff. Using a staff or a pole teaches your body how to connect and teaches you how to issue power. That's really important. One of the biggest misconceptions about drunken boxing is that it's flowery fists and embroidery kicks, meaning that it looks really great, wins lots of tournaments, but can't fight worth a damn. That's no good. You have to make sure that whatever martial art you practice is still a real martial art, or you're doing it a disservice. You're disrespecting anybody who passed it down to you, and their master, and so on and so on. So I'm just going to pick up my spear. Now Chinese spears are generally made of a wood known as waxwood, and it's this stuff here, and it's quite flexible, as you can see. Now this is really important. When you're going to do the exercises of pole shaping, you have to have a flexible staff. If you use a hardwood staff, rather than the pole shaking when power is issued into it, your body will shake. And this is kind of like anti-chiropractic treatments. So instead of putting things back into place, it knocks them out. So really, really important to have a flexible stick. Rattan works well, but it's kind of rubbery. Waxwood is the traditional method. So this form, I'm just going to perform some of the movements from this form. I'm going to do it with the spear so that you can see what I'm talking about. Now, it's really important that you have what's known as Yin Yang power. Yin Yang power means that not just one side or the other is working. So in this case, if my right hand is forward, it's not my right hand moving the spear around. My left hand's just sitting on my hip. It's totally useless. There's no point. And it's not just my rear hand moving the spear around the pivot point in front. It's actually both. So what you imagine is that there's a pivot point in between your hands on the staff. And that pivot point won't move, but both of the hands will create power around it. It's just like the Yin Yang diagram here. One hand descending, yin, one hand ascending, yang. If both of these powers are present at the same time, then you'll start to create real power. Real power also creates body connection. This is really important. So if I just do the first movement, just the upwards movement, if I do it incorrectly with just my lead hand, you'll see a certain type of energy out of it. Okay? You can see that I'm jerking it up with my front arm. Or even if I do the opposite, my rear arm only, you'll see only the rear arm engaged. There's really not a whole lot of motion in the pole itself, or even in the flag at the end of the spear. Whereas if I do both, now you're going to notice that my hips are going to move and everything else. That's kind of another topic that we'll get into in a minute. You'll see that the Yin Yang power working around this pivot point will create a whole lot more flex into the spear. Okay? If I go down to the side, you can see that there's a lot more shake and a lot more bend in the pole. What that means is that the power that's being issued out of my body through my hands hits the stick and is actually powerful enough to move the stick back and forth. It's just that simple. Now, in modern martial arts, especially Chinese Wushu, you'll see a lot of people using swords and spears that are super, super flexible. And the reason that came about is because if you didn't actually have the ability to shake a pole or shake the blade of a sword, you would buy a sword that would shake for you and make you look like you knew what you were doing. Don't fall into the trap. It's really important that you understand the method behind the madness, okay? So, pole shaking exercises, I'm just going to show a couple of them. Again, you have to have a flexible pole. If you don't have a flexible pole, don't even do this stuff. So, the first pole shaking exercise is very, very simple. All I'm going to do is a downward strike, just like this. So I'm going to lift up the head of my spear in this case, and I'm just going to turn my body back as if I was striking a table over at this end. So I wind up, and you notice that when I wind up, I coil up the body, and then I'll release the power downwards. And that's what's going to create the shake, okay? Again, up, and then down. Okay? Now you can also do this in reverse. You can come backwards and upwards at the same time, and you can get a shake at the top, okay? So you've got the upward shake and the downward shake. Very important. You'll see that there's a little bit of vibration in the body. That's what you want to start to achieve. Could take time, doesn't matter.